Welcome to the Rhythm and Remedy podcast.
The time has come to share your thoughts, relive your moments, open up your heart with one and only Rhythm and Remedy. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Rhythm and Remedy podcast, where music meets medicine. Today is a very special day. I am so honored because I've looked up to this person for a long, long time. Not to outdate him or anything. But I am so honored to be joined by somebody who has, had such a profound impact on the sport landscape here, who's not afraid to ask the tough questions. Someone who I followed since his days at the Globe and Mail, Matt Sekeres, through to Sekeres and Price from the 1040 days through TSN, and now they have their own show, which is available on all streaming platforms as well, and it's really good, especially if you're looking for great sports coverage as well, and obviously the local landscape here. So really pleased to have in the studio with me today, Mr. Matt Sekeres, who has been freed from the shackles of Ontario. How you doing, brother?
You're too kind, buddy. You're too kind, and I feel likewise about you. So thank you for the invitation. Pleased to be here. As soon as you said I'd like to have you on the pod, I was like, let's make this happen soon as we can. You've been such a great supporter of ours, so happy to be on the show with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. No, of course, I've been listening to 1040 for many, many years, and then obviously you guys as well. And, the way that you've covered, so many different topics within sports, and you've been around for some of the greatest runs in Vancouver history, and also the most challenging, if you will, parts of the sports landscape. But just to even kind of rewind back to the beginning here, my objective has always been to kind of take people behind the scenes, take people behind the scenes of the person and who Matt Sekeres is. And where did this all start for you in terms of the broadcasting side of things? And because you were back in Ottawa, I believe, right? That's where you're originally from.
Yeah, so the broadcasting thing for me started pretty much in 2002.
Wow.
That was my first year where I was actually a full-time employed sports reporter with The Beat. I was covering the Canadian Football League out of Ottawa. And I found myself doing a lot of hits across the country on different sports and news talk radio stations. I mean, at the time, 9 franchises in the CFL, right? So anytime your team went to go play another team, more often than not, the local radio guy would want you on to, talk about the team, talk about the game. So that's where it really started for me. And here often it was with the legend J.P. McConnell.
Oh, wow.
Back NW or Mojo Sports Radio. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. To Team 1040 at the time. So oftentimes it was with JP. Then started to be with BMAC on the morning here.
Wow. And this was while you were still back in Ottawa?
I was still back east, at the time. So that was the first time that I sort of got any kind of exposure to Vancouver and the British Columbia market. Mm-hmm. And from there, that job lasted several years. Then I found myself at the National Post in Toronto, and that's when I started to do a little bit more broadcasting.
Yeah.
I was oftentimes a panelist on Bob McCowan's show. He did the Friday round. Yeah, he used to do the Friday round tables. So I'd be called in to do a round table. I'd be called in to do some co-hosting in the summer when people were away. I also found myself doing TV Ontario, the local public television public broadcaster in Ontario, oftentimes when sports issues were to come up. So, drip, 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 I was getting more and more broadcasting experience. Shuggy, I was really a newspaper reporter by trade. That was my day job. That was who paid me. But more and more I started doing television and radio work, mostly radio.
Yeah.
And I moved out here to BC, and at the time, this was December 2007, and at the time, we had the big Olympic consortium that was coming. This was a amalgamation of all these different media outlets that were going to cover the Olympics jointly for CTV and the Globe and Mail. And being the sports reporter for the Globe and Mail, and the new guy, Rob Gray, who was at the time the Team 1040 program director, was pretty anxious to meet who this new guy was. I think it was also, I tease him a bit, it was also good company politics for him to have the local Globe and Mail guy in, given everyone was together in the consortium. So the next thing I know, I was invited to coffee, and man, did I do a lot of coffee meetings when I first moved out here to Vancouver, Juggy.
You kind of need it though, man, with all the...
Let's go grab a coffee. I can't believe...
the lack of vitamin D, man.
Oh my God, telling you. I never drank that much caffeine in my life. Like, I was going out for coffee 2-3 times a week with different people. So we went out for coffee. I can still remember it. It was the Starbucks right across from the old station location on West 2nd there, right by Canby Bridge. And Rob and I hit it off, and he basically said, okay, I'm going to get you a hit on what was the Blake Price experience at the time.
Oh, wow.
Blake
This
Price,
is going back. This was, man.
So Blake Price did an evening show, if I'm not mistaken, and I did hits with him. And then shortly thereafter, Blake moved to a midday show. And I started doing regular Monday 1 p.m. hits with Blake.
Wow.
And Trevor Martins was the producer, and I'm pleased to say, so this would have been
T-Mart,
Juggy, this would have been 2008, and I'm pleased to say I still work with both of those guys today.
Oh, that's, I mean, the amount of relationships that you cultivate over the years is astounding. And just kind of being around different guys from the sporting community, and obviously being able to perform for the Canucks, I've gotten to know different people, and it's like a family almost, right? Like, you get to know so many people, and while it's such a big industry with so many sports and everything, it's still a very small world. Like, everyone kind of knows everybody or has talked to people, and I think it really connects people together.
For sure.
Kind of going back, because you said you were a newspaper reporter. So was that something you wanted to do, like, ever since you were growing up, or like, how did this all?
I mean, I sort of realized I wasn't going to play defensive end in the NFL.
That was like me when I was like, I can't play hockey. although honestly, now we do have blind hockey. But yes,
I don't know. I was in my mid-teens, and I realized, this athletics thing is not going to really work out professionally. I'm not that good. And I knew I liked to write. I knew I liked to communicate. I thought about law school, but it was just so much damn school. It's a lot. I'm not sure I have that in me.
As a brother that went through medical school, like for my brother, it's crazy,
like,
man.
To think of spending like basically twice the amount of years at university that you would otherwise spend was pretty daunting to me. Not to mention, the kids in law were so bright, and studying and learning came very easy to them, and didn't come quite as easy to me. So I decided to pursue journalism. I took journalism and mass communications at Carleton University. I got there late. I got there at age 20, Juggy. I was in class with kids who were like 17, 18 years old.
No way.
At the time, Ontario had a grade 13. And then I took an extra semester beyond that. So by the time I got to Carleton, I was 20 years old, which turned out to be a huge blessing in disguise, because I don't think I would have been mature enough at 17 or 18 to handle the course load and everything that was required, let alone to live away from home. Like, if I had to cook my own meals, do my own laundry, and like could sit there and go out to the bar every night.
That sounds like a struggle for all of us at that age.
Oh, man, I never would have made it. So I was at Carleton, 20 years old. I was just a liberal arts student. And I was walking. They have these underground tunnels there because it's so cold that people take the tunnels between buildings in the winter. And I was walking one day, and I pulled up beside the director of the School of Journalism. And he said, hello. And I said, hello. And I said, you don't know me, but I'd like to get into your program. And he goes, well, we only take about, at max, 6 transfers per into second year.
Yeah.
And you got to have at least an A- average. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And from that moment forward, it was just sort of everything to do that. And I wound up achieving it by the, hairs on my chinny chin just over that A- average in first year.
Hey.
And they accepted me.
That's
so
beautiful.
Then I was in the program, and that gave me more access to the outside world of journalism, which was terrific. And then I just started booking some internships, the Ottawa Sun, the Globe and Mail.
Yeah. So was it like sports stories before then too?
Yeah, it was. I mean, your training there is in news. Like their idea is that news is the bedrock that everybody, regardless of what niche you're going to find within the bigger realm of journalism, news is the grounding. News is the bedrock. Everyone's better off by doing news. So I did a lot of news. And then, anytime I could do sports, I did.
Yeah.
And anytime there were opportunities to do like apprenticing or internships in sports, I did. I volunteered for the school newspaper and, did mostly sports stories there, and then became the sports editor and the editor-in-chief. So, I was going to do whatever it took to make it in newspapers.
Yeah.
And at the time, of course, like this was the early internet days, Juggy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure anyone had quite put it together what the internet was going to do to newspapers. Like,
oh, I know.
I certainly thought it was an industry that had been around an awfully long time and would be around for an awfully long time.
Oh, for sure. And then there was like the online sort of phenomenon for newspapers, and then it kind of, it turned, right?
Right. So needless to say, that became one of many challenges in my career. You realized you had to adapt and redefine yourself. So
exactly.
When I came out here, it was for the Globe and Mail. And like my first year, I was covering everything. Like I was going down the West Coast with the Raptors. I did the NBA Finals, Celtics, Lakers. I was going down to Seattle. They had a good team, up-and-coming team at the time. I was doing NFL games there. I covered the last Sonics game. Key Arena.
Yeah, that's
so
historical.
I was doing all these stories up and down the West Coast, went to China and did the Olympics, and like it was amazing.
Yeah.
And then by a couple of years later, after the Vancouver Whistler Olympics, it was clear to me that the Globe didn't sort of have the same commitment to sports journalism and certainly didn't have the same budget or ability to go out and cover the stories that it once did.
Yeah.
And so when Rob Gray and Mike Whittingham and James Stewart at
1040 there.
1040 said, would you be interested in coming over full-time? Because I was doing the show with BMAC, as you might remember. I was his part-time co-host there in the mid-mornings. And when they came in and said, would you like to come over and have your own show, I jumped at the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it was like Canucks lunch for a bit, and then it kind of went between that, and then it went to Sekeres and Price, I believe, and then
we started in the it was middays.
Yeah.
I forget if it started at 10 or 11. You might know better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was, somewhere around then.
Yeah. And then it was an hour of Canucks lunch. You're right about that, from 12 to 1.
Yeah.
We used to get such shit because we would talk about other NHL happenings around the Canucks during Canucks lunch, and people would call up and, this is Canucks lunch, Canucks. Sir, we just spent the first 45 minutes on the Canucks. We're talking about this big NHL story. Well, I didn't hear the first 45 minutes, and I was promised Canucks lunch. So that was a good baptism into radio to understand people's listening patterns and how it's, it's not one continuous show. It's basically 4 shows over and over again.
Oh, for sure.
So Blake started, it didn't last long, Juggy, but Blake was there half the time, I want to say, 2 out of the 4 hours for several months.
I think I remember that.
Right, because he was still doing pre-post, and then the next thing I know, Blake was with me the entire duration of the program.
Yeah.
While still doing pre and post. So that was great. A few years later, they moved us to the PM Drive slot. That was perfect. particularly good for Blake because that meant he could just hang out at the station and do pregame and postgame right after.
Yeah, it's like show. Convenient, and it's like usually that's when people are driving home from work, and like, no, that's amazing.
And that's when I first encountered the famous Juggy from Delta, who was a most regular caller to the postgame show.
Yeah.
Never let on that he was a musician, never let on that he was blind, never let on that he had some fame here in the Vancouver community, but would call up Blake on the post-game show and give his 2 cents and ask his questions. And the next thing you know, all these years later, here we still are, my man.
Wow. That's what it is. That's how I, treat sports and all the connections you make through it. It's like everyone kind of becomes like a family, whether you know them personally or you don't. When the late, great Jason Botchford passed away, I think we all felt it. Yeah. We all did, whether we knew Jason very well or not. And in fact, I knew Botch, just from like early interactions with him. And he always used to encourage me to keep going in what I was doing. Mm-hmm. So what would you say is like the sort of the challenges that you were getting into when it came to broadcasting versus now?
Yeah.
What are the differences now, compared to then?
Well, the wisdom and experience you gain. When I was early in my radio career, first of all, it was really jarring to sit in front of a text message inbox and get all these negative comments and reviews. Like that was, wow, I had never.
How'd you deal with
you
all
that? You don't get that in newspapers, right? No, you might get the odd editor, letter to the editor. You may get the odd email, but like this was just like cascading messages of text messages.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were so negative, either they didn't like me or they didn't like what we were talking about or they didn't like, this take or whatnot. So that was a big adjustment. I wanted to fight every battle in the inbox when I first started.
And you can't, right?
You absolutely can't. I teased Bruff. He was exactly the same way when he first came in. Because the thing is like, the inbox is not the show. The audience is not experiencing that inbox. So you can't get very hung up on it. And I now tell people who are going into the industry, part of our job is to be a punching bag for the public.
For sure.
Part of our job is to be the outlet for this. Some would say passion. Other times it's rage of the sports fan,
it's the
right?
Anger and the passion, and
exactly. I joked with a friend the other day. He was doing the post game for the end of series between the Leafs and the Senators.
Oh man!
And he was doing it from the Ottawa side of things.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, tonight you'll be one part punching bag and one part psychiatrist because some people are going to be angry and you're going to be the outlet, and other people are just going to need reassuring guidance, counsel."
Well, and I think we all have to understand it's not necessarily us. Right, as the people that are doing it, it's more how the team is doing, and I think it's like when you watch a game or when the team isn't doing so well, I think that's when those emotions really come out, right?
Yeah.
Or when there's a certain play in the game and you might disagree with the way it was reffed, but the other person could come on and say, no, like it was a bad call. What are you talking about, right?
Oh yeah.
And so you get a lot of that in this industry.
So now I just it's water off a duck's back.
Yeah.
And I tell young people who are going in the industry, like, you have 2 choices. Read it and don't let it affect you, or don't read it. But reading it and letting it affect you and reading it and wanting to litigate it on the show, that is not an option.
When was that moment for you when that changed?
Oh, man. It was a particularly spicy post-game. I want to say it was in the playoffs in 2012 when they lost to the Kings.
Yeah.
We did the show from Staples Center in Los Angeles. And we were taking a cab back to the hotel, and Blake and Mike Whittingham, who was our executive producer, both said to me, Matt, you don't have to fight all these inbox battles, huh? Basically tone it down.
And
I was like, okay. Good counsel.
Yeah.
I teased Blake from that moment. He's picked up the slack. I do think sometimes I infected him, because from that point forward, I don't want to say I went cold turkey, Juggy, but I went from like here to there in terms of the inbox battles I was willing to fight. Plus, you can fight your own Twitter battles too. So that sort of filled the gap a little as well. But I teased Blake from that moment. He's picked up the slack, and now it's just it's a combination of guys fighting inbox battles as opposed to just me.
Yeah, well, I think it's important, when we're covering the entertainment industry in any sort of fashion, or if we're a part of it. Like, even for me, I used to let people like really affect what I'm doing, and when it came to the anthems, even, or like I would even know, like, yeah, I didn't do great tonight, I could do better next time. There's always things that as a performer, you can't let those things get to you, because if there's a motivation that you can take from it, it's when you watch like the documentaries like The Last Dance with Michael Jordan or something, right? If someone had anything to say about them, they would just take that and be like, I'm going to show these people, but I'm first and foremost, I'm going to show that I'm more than what they say they are. Because you have to prove yourself right. And I think part of it too is just being reflective, right? Like some critique is good.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do it all the time to the people we cover, so we should be subject to it ourselves. I'm just amazed. You got a bad review for singing the anthem. Like, I cannot imagine
it
misjudgment that this person must live in to give Juggy a bad review.
Oh, no. You know what? Music is such a beautiful art. That art is also very subjective, right? And not everyone's going to enjoy your art or the way that you present, and that's just a part of it, And so I think once I started really getting to that realization, it was like, okay, I'm going to take some critique from people that have something really meaningful to say, right? And the other thing is, and Elliot Friedman is someone I also really look up to, because I've seen him at work. I actually was at the Hockey Day in Canada event they did last year, and he was just unbelievable, like the way he just treats people.
Wonderful guy.
And so just kind of hearing him talk about, you're not going to take all these comments from everybody, from people that don't even know about, the industry or know about what you're doing. But what you can do is essentially what makes sense to you. You can always incorporate it into what you're doing. Yeah. And what doesn't make sense to you, it's like, okay, it's fine.
One of the people who
it took me years to get there.
No, one of the people who helped me out on this from afar was Jim Rome. Because Jim Rome is such a legend in our business, what we do, sports talk.
And he's very opinionated.
And Jim Rome says all the time, the show's not for everyone.
Yeah.
There are some people who are not going to get the show. There are some people who are not going to enjoy the show. And you cannot sit there and think that you can please everyone. So if those people don't get the show, if those people don't like the show, if they don't like the style, if they don't like the, as you say, how you present, what you're talking about, the fact that you're on our show, we're going to have the whole conversation, right? The good, bad, and indifferent. Yeah. Then you've just got to be willing to say, yeah, okay, well, the show's not for you. That's okay. We'll move forward and appeal to the people we do appeal to.
Yeah, and that's the main focus, right? It's like, how do the majority of people, or the people that really follow you, feel about your show, or feel about what you're doing? It's like what Pedersen has been going through the past year, right? And in fact, it's funny because I had a couple of friends that went to the Dice and Ice gala, and they met Petey, and they were like, yeah, he's a really nice dude, but he kept asking. He was like, well, what are people saying about me? Yeah. And I can relate to that because I used to be that way, right? Like, well, what are people saying? And it's like, sometimes I think we often forget that life itself is a game. Like, I kind of look at life in that sense, is that it's a game, and the sports that we play or the activities that we do are the game within the game, and life itself is we're when we grow up, or when we're growing up, we're given like different situations. Like when you play Call of Duty, or when you play like different games, you're often given different paths, and then you kind of have to rise in different levels and figure it out. We always have to figure out different challenges within the activities or the games that we play. And so I think it's the same thing in terms of life itself. If we start to really embrace life and, really be introspective, take care of ourselves mentally, and not let things sort of affect us in that way, and sort of treat our life as a game where, hey, let's take on this challenge and let's keep, being the dog on the bone and getting past this challenge and then moving on to the next challenge, and and treat our life as different levels of it.
You should trademark this, Juggy. Life is like a game of Call of Duty. Huh? Oh, what do you think? Life is like Call of Duty. You're just moving up the levels and Call. Do you play Call of Duty?
I've played before. I've played and sometimes I'll just end up shooting myself, and I'll be like, hey, I just shot myself in the foot. There's a life lesson, No
blood.
It's crazy. And so I just feel like, once we start to really embrace our life as hey, let's live every day, and let's try and learn something new every day, and let's look at what we can do today to get closer to what we want to do instead of shying away from it.
Yeah.
I think that's mentally really good for us.
So it's fitting you say that about Elias, because our whole show Friday, Blake brought it up too after listening to Alvin with the season ticket holders on Thursday.
Right.
We asked, is it time for them to start saying nice things about Elias? They continue to say all these nice things about JT, and it's he's the guy who's gone. You've got a guy you've got to build back up here. And, Patrick Johnson came on the show from the province, and he's Elias seeks out the negativity. I'm oh my God.
Yeah.
He's Elias needs to do a better job seeking out the positivity, Elias needs to, race to the uplifting stuff. Blake even brought out the Stuart Smalley. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. And gosh darn it, people like me. And you do wonder whether if he can be directed like that, whether that might have an effect on the game, rather than being sullen, rather than being aggrieved, or rather than feeling like the market is against him, he could feel like the market is behind him, like we saw in those early days when he was such a revelation here, and people were firmly in his corner. You remember his rookie year?
Oh man,
first game where he's scoring, he's looking around at people cheering his name,
snapping the shots, and
absolutely, the storybook stuff.
Yeah,
we need to get that back from him.
We do, and I think, like you said, it's how do you sort of get past that? Do people like me stage? Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't matter what people say in the long grand scheme of things. It's about how prepared do we come in, and how can we, and it's a challenge. Like you said, it's worth embracing, because it is a market that if you win in this market, it's like none other.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And here's the thing, Juggy, we have it a little bit easier than you guys have it in music and performing arts. And this is something. This is something that I very much embraced at one point in my career. It still applies. It's still true. I might be getting older and a little more melancholy and not want to lean into it as much. But in talk radio, hate worked as well as love. In fact,
can you expand on that? What do you mean by that?
You could even say that hate worked better than love. Dave Pratt used to talk about this all the time. The haters listen twice as long.
Yeah.
If somebody is shaking their fist going, Pratt, Sekeres, I cannot believe how dumb you are. You were so out to lunch. That is so wrong. That is an emotional engagement that is more intense than someone shaking their head going, yeah, good point. Yeah, I think he's got that one right. They tend to move on pretty quickly, whereas the hater is just sitting there raging and wants to hear more so that they can disagree with you some more. If you look at the history of talk radio and the people who have had the most success, whether it's a Howard Stern or a Rush Limbaugh or a Don Imus or a Dr. Laura or a Jim Rome, there is a good portion of the audience that is hate listening, right? That doesn't agree, that just, it's an outlet, it's a cathartic outlet for them. And so Blake and I say we try and do three things every day on the show. Number one, we want to make the audience laugh at some point.
For sure.
Nobody is ever changing the station if they're laughing, right? and plus it's sports.
Yeah.
It should be fun. So there needs to be an element of humor to every.
You can't be serious all the time.
Every show. Exactly. Yeah. And like sometimes it's scripted where we're going to end on a funny tweet or something. Sometimes it's just during the course of the show where we get to a humorous moment between us. But my ear is always sort of listening for, okay, is there something we can do here that can be funny and bring a laugh out of the crowd? So number one is laugh. Number two is think. We either got to give them information or give them a perspective that they have not considered before.
Yeah.
Something that takes, even if it's just for a few seconds, of silent reflection of, I never thought about it that way. Or, oh, knowing that now, here's what I think. If you can nourish some degree of thinking on a topic, give food for thought, if you will, that is a healthy and constructive show. And then the third thing we always say is we want to make them emote. So whether that's the guy shaking his head going, yep, Price is 100% right today. Or whether it's the guy shaking his fist, Sekeres is so out to lunch, that's emoting. So if we do all three of those things in the show, Juggy, that's a full show.
In terms of any of these things, is there a line to be drawn in terms of that? And how do you draw that line?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's got to... And look, do enough of these and you will go over the line, right? Yeah. Like do enough of these and you will have bad days where you cross the line.
Yeah.
And we've certainly had those.
How do you get back from that? What is it that
you're better the next day.
Yeah.
You hope for forgiveness. Mm-hmm. You learn from it and don't do it again.
What was like the craziest moment for you in that regard?
We did. So for me, and like not something I'm proud of or want to relive all that much. The worst part about it is like I had Blake and our producer at the time, Rachel Goldman, telling me like, oh, I don't know about this, man. And I still went down. Do you remember when Jeannie Bouchard took that nobody to the basketball game on the date? Remember she tweeted the Super Bowl at 28-3 with the Patriots and Falcons. She tweeted, "This is over."
Yeah.
And some, young buck got in her mentions. So it's like, take me on a date if it isn't. And she's like, you're on. And next thing you know,
she's taking him to the basketball game.
And she took him to the basketball game. And I did this whole thing about what they could be talking about, what they could be doing on their date. And it went over the line. It was a little crass. It was a little crude.
Oh, no.
In a few sections. And Rachel and Blake was just going, oh, no. We got tremendous feedback that day. Like, somebody was like, I nearly drove into the ditch, Matt. That was hilarious. We had others going, that is highly inappropriate. Anyways, I would not do that again.
And then you have Rick Dollywall, reading these texts on air.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's him getting duped, right? People seeing if they can get him to say things. So anyways, it comes from experience. You test the boundaries a little. Yeah. You know what you can get away with, what you can't.
Yeah. And we can't be perfect.
We asked a poll question going into a Super Bowl once, who is your wife or girlfriend rooting for, Jimmy Garoppolo or Tom Brady? Because they were both sort of, these handsome quarterbacks. And we got clapped back. And it was like,
oh, man.
What about the gay community? I was like, oh, man, why are you asking this question? I was like, why are you asking it only one gender? And I was like, okay, yeah, all right. So some good points were made. Won't be asking that again. At least not in the same way. So you live and learn. And you just hope there's forgiveness. You hope you don't screw up so too bad that you get canceled, because that's the thing now too. Juggy, like.
Yeah, I mean,
how many people of yesteryear would have gotten quote unquote canceled?
Yeah, I know.
If that was the climate.
I know, and it's one of those things where, everything's kind of changed so fast in some sense. Yeah. Because, in 2010, like, things were different. Now it's like you fast forward like 15 years, which seems, like a longer time, but it's really not. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you got to be careful about, the things that you do say. And I guess it's really hard though, because at the same time, it's like, I'm not even trying to come from this point of like, I'm trying to say something different, but it's one of the things that, we all have to sort of adjust and adapt to, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, I think that's where it comes back to the game of life. It's like you keep adapting in anything that you do, but also in your in your own life.
For sure. And honestly, that's been very helpful to me in a lot of ways, professionally and personally. In terms of the way I think, in terms of inclusivity, in terms of respect. I know woke is a 4-letter word for a lot of people, but for me, I fixate on the fact that it's derivative of awakened. Who doesn't want to be awakened?
Yeah, exactly.
Like to me, there's positivity there. So So look, I think one of the things that distinguished Blake and I's show in the early going is that we weren't quite the typical backslapping, jocular, male-only locker room show.
Yeah.
We actually, it was kind of a backhanded compliment, but she caught herself and apologized. We did an event. Juggy, you may remember we did events the day after the last Canucks game of regular seasons where they missed the playoffs, and we called them wakes. Come to our wakes. Come to our wake for the Canucks. So we did a couple at Mahoney's and Sons on Stamps Landing.
Right.
And so we were doing the show there, and it was a pretty good crowd. And a lady came up to us in one of the commercial breaks, and she said, Matt, Blake, I just want you to know that I'm an everyday listener. And we said, oh, thank you very much. She goes, I know I'm not the primary demographic of sports talk. And we're like, no, you're not. And she goes, but I just wanted to say, because I'm a huge sports fan and I gravitated to your show because I felt it was a safe space for me, basically. I forget how she phrased it. My Jeannie Bouchard bit notwithstanding here. But she said, thanks for not being misogynists. And Blake and I just sort of heard it, and she went, oh, my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it that way. And we're like, no. We get what you're saying. We understand our industry. So that moment stuck out.
Yeah, and exactly. It's like what the context. I think sometimes people get caught up on words rather than the context of what the actual person is trying to say.
Exactly.
Right? Because we're not always good at communicating.
Correct.
Right? We're not always good at finding ways to communicate in the best way, but, it's awakened, right?
Right.
And I think that nowadays, unfortunately, we just hear one word and we're like, oh my God, this is what this person said, or
I know.
This is what they were trying to say, or the ability to conversate or the ability to talk now has really gone down.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so grateful for the sort of moments and people that have taught me some lessons along this road.
Yeah.
For example, I told you I started as a football writer.
Right.
So I covered a quarterback by the name of Kerry Joseph. He played for Ottawa, Saskatchewan, a cup of coffee with Toronto and Edmonton, former CFL most outstanding player, won a Grey Cup in Saskatchewan. And when he first got his start, it was all the running and athletic tools that stood out. He had not played quarterback in several years, was actually a defensive back and a kick returner for the Seahawks for several years in the NFL.
Yeah.
And then came back to the position as in the CFL. And he said to me one day, we had a really good rapport, and he said to me one day, he goes, Matt, why do you write about me as an athletic quarterback?
Yeah.
And I said, well, Kerry, because you were athletic enough to return kicks and play DB in the NFL. I mean, you've played all these other sports, and starred in high school. You're a tremendous athlete playing quarterback. He goes, okay. He goes, that's probably fair in my case, but I just want to let you know, when black quarterbacks hear white writers say athletic quarterback, there's a stigma there that goes back to the 70s that not smart enough to play quarterback, not a leader, blah, blah, blah.
I didn't know that at all.
Thrower. He's like, no quarterback wants to be known as a running quarterback or an athletic quarterback. His job number one is to throw the ball.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy cow. And I was using this phrase, I thought complimentary.
Yeah.
And I was taught a really big lesson on the words you use and the way they are received.
Yeah.
Because they're not always received in the way that you intend them.
Yeah.
And that is something that it's pretty important to know because, that is going to presumably improve your word choice going forward.
Oh, for sure.
So that was a big lesson for me, and I am still to this day grateful to Carrie for that.
Yeah, exactly. I just feel like a lot of times now, like people sometimes don't even give the chance for people to, like, hey, that was a bad word choice, like my bad, because I feel like a lot of the times people try to discuss in 280 characters or less their thoughts and feelings. And while there's been a lot of, without sounding like an uncle, while there's been a lot of like great developments within social media and everything, I think that, there's certainly, times where that ability to, actually hash it out has really, subsided, unfortunately.
And I think sometimes the fact that there's a big audience looking in also affects that too, right?
Yeah.
Like if it was a one-on-one conversation, it would be a lot different than if each side comes to the table with X number of followers who are cheering them on in this one-on-one like Roman Colosseum battle that you'll see on Twitter. And look, if you want to go seek out the cesspool that is on social media, it is there. As we talked about earlier, I am of the mind that if you are, then you're going to have to let it roll off your back or just don't bother.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say, and I think this is true in our relationship. Social media is a terrific way to find community as well.
100%.
Like we're closer today because we send notes to each other on social media when I see you perform the anthem or you come to one of our live events or whatnot.
Oh, absolutely.
So I have found all sorts of community on social media, and particularly with the Vancouver and the BC sports fan, which is in fact our audience. And for that, I'm very, very grateful.
No, absolutely. I am very grateful for that as well, and, just to see, like you said, the community that you can really build off of it, get to really know people in a certain way. It is, very important. I think part of it too is like, we're in a society now where, instead of actually reflecting on what a person says too, we tend to react. It's such a human nature thing, but because it's so innate within our human nature aspect of it, it's very hard to kind of get through it. And also, I feel like we're so bent on trying to have conversations and try to win conversations rather than trying to I'll see these like debates online where it's like someone's like, oh, you're pathetic and oh, you're dumb and like you're stupid. And it's like, are we really trying to forward the conversation or are we just trying to call each other out?
When you get to name calling, then forget about it. Right?
Yeah.
Like at that point, you're not having a fruitful discussion that's benefiting either party or whatever audience it may attract.
Exactly. I wanted to ask you, what would you think has been your, life-defining moment for you?
Oh, wow. What a big question. That's a really, really big question. It's it may be a bit of a cheesy answer.
No.
I was incredibly blessed to have the two parents that I had. They've been together 56 years now.
Wow.
Still alive, 80 and 79.
Wow.
My dad was an athlete. The family business was construction.
Yeah.
My mom came from a British family that didn't really much care about sports. She was a ballet teacher by trade.
Oh,
so
wow.
She was very artistically inclined. They met on a blind date because my mom's aunt lived right across the street from where my dad grew up.
Yeah.
And one of the neighbors fixed them up, basically, thought they would be good together. They got married in short order, like 9 months later or something like that.
Yeah.
And my mom had several miscarriages and was told, you're probably not going to be able to have children. So when I came about, I was kind of a miracle in the family. Like, it was my mom's third pregnancy.
Oh, wow.
And when it started, they were sort of under the impression that this could end the way the first two did. So when I was actually taken to term and born, that was the doctors, everyone was a little bit surprised by all of that. So, I got two great parents who provided an incredibly nurturing home. Discussion and debate was encouraged at the dinner table. Like we, across a broad spectrum too, sports, arts, culture, politics, language, like, name your topic, maybe outside of math and science, because that's my dad.
I can't stand it, man.
That sort of left us a little bit behind. I grew up in an ideal household with two loving and supporting parents who were great, but also tough too. Right. Yeah. And that my brother coming along a few years later added to that environment. So when you say life-defining moment, like there's no way I am where I am today without my parents and without coming from that sort of environment.
I couldn't have said it better. I mean, honestly, my parents have been that shield in a sense for all of us. They had, faith in me as a person who's blind. To live to my fullest potential, which I think is so important to have. Like, I think you are a product of your environment in so many different ways.
For sure.
And I think that all of that is super important, to really consider is how you raise your kids and how much time you can really take out for them. Because I think hard work is really important, but you don't want to do too many things at the expense of child development for your kids. Yeah. And, like you said, like having that safe environment where things like, talking about certain things, encouragement, right? Essentially of different discussion, debates and all of that. I think that's so important because, of course, for me as a person who's blind growing up, like I dealt with so many different things. I dealt with bullying. I dealt with a lot of like, things like that. And that, just to have that support from them, I think really shaped the person who I am, right? Yeah. Like I grew up with tough love, like I'd be a Rick Tocchet type of guy, right? Like, couple things, obviously I don't want to keep you too long, but I wanted to ask you about, obviously, the 2010 Olympics were a big thing. 2011, obviously we had the Stanley Cup final run. How was it covering those things?
Oh, Juggy.
How was it in terms of, like I heard, like especially in the Stanley Cup playoffs, there was some crazy pushback. There was a lot of different things.
Oh wow!
And so, what was it like? Because you covered those things.
So, in a word, exhilarating.
Yeah.
That's why you enter the business, to be able to tell those sorts of stories, witness those events firsthand, and, have the honor and privilege to either, the pen or microphone at your disposal and tell those stories. The Olympics was wholly uplifting. I have almost no bad things to say about the Olympic experience.
The whole city was...
It was an incredible time to be in the city of Vancouver and to be Canadian, a time unlike any other, I think, in Canadian history.
Yeah.
It was so uplifting, and look, needless to say, Canada beating the United States in overtime of the men's gold medal game, like they did, with Sydney scoring the golden goal, and after Roberto was tested and had to make all those saves, like it was quite a crescendo on that final day, and then the closing ceremonies. But I can remember covering the gold medal game. I've said this on my show before. It is one of the only times in my career where I totally lost my neutrality and objectivity. Yeah. I was firmly rooting for Canada.
Of course.
I wasn't even, by the end, I'm not even sure I was even hiding it all that much. I just felt it was so important that if these games could end on this note for Canada, like, what a way to close up shop here in Vancouver, Whistler after 18 days. So covered the game.
Yeah.
Finished writing the stories. Went off for dinner.
Yeah.
Then went to the CTV wrap party at the Wall Center that night.
Oh man, that must have been
I walked right into the room. I saw Chris Cuthbert. It was the first guy I saw.
Wow.
I went, Chris, what a great call. And he was like, there's some things about it, but very nice of you to say, man. All play-by-play guys.
I know, it's
you
always,
ever go up to a play-by-play guy and go, man, you really nailed it. What a great call. They will instantly bring up a call that they're not as proud of because it seems to be the play-by-play way.
I know. That's like me when I sing. It's like, I don't know. There could have been, exactly.
Love this song. I really screwed up on the chorus on that one. Yeah. Anyways, so saw Chris, had a sociable with my colleagues.
Yeah.
Went back to my apartment in Kitsilano. I believe I'd recorded both the men's hockey game and the closing ceremonies.
Yeah.
Sat back in the solitude of my apartment, cracked a beer. That I Believe song came on, the Olympic anthem, and I just bawled. Like the emotion just came out of me for a long period of time. And
I know.
At first I wasn't really sure what was happening there. I thought it was a little bit of exhaustion showing through.
Yeah.
Because
maybe a bit of both.
God knows when you work 18 consecutive days, morning to night, because I was doing women's hockey, finishing up at 1 a.m. with the final game, Juggy. And then, coming home, grabbing a few hours, turning right back around and being out at another event to catch a bus or whatever the case may be at 8, 9 the next morning. So it was a lot of work. So I thought it was a little bit of exhaustion. But I think it was also a realization that I had just completed something that would be effectively the pinnacle of my career.
The pinnacle, yeah.
I was 34 years old, 33 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And I sort of recognized, I'm not sure it's ever going to get better than that.
Yeah.
You've just covered this generation's Paul Henderson moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, right? Really. It was
in the city that you live in. During that week, my parents came in from Ottawa.
Wow.
My brother surprised us, just couldn't stay away. There was a knock at the door one day, and I was like, I'm sorry, guys, there was a flight. Can I sleep on the floor, Matt? So I had my whole family living in my tiny kid's apartment. There was one night between games at Rogers Arena where I got a text from a friend and walked down to a restaurant on Beatty, and a bunch of my friends who I grew up with and went to high school were there. And so I was able to experience a little bit of it was packed to all the Olympic colors, and Swedes were over here, Norwegians were over there. Everybody was having a great time. So I got to have a night, with some of my oldest friends in high school and probably even elementary school buddies.
Wow.
So that was amazing. So packed a lot into that 2 weeks. And that's
fond memories. 2010 was honestly one of the best years.
A single bad thing. The other thing is the country came together. We're such this big geographic landmass. And Chuggy, my family were from Montreal originally. We spent time in Calgary. Mostly grew up in Ottawa, then worked in Toronto, Vancouver. So I feel really, really passionate and really attached to different parts of the country.
Yeah.
I know most people don't because they don't have that experience, that pan-Canadian experience.
I'm the same way.
Yeah. So I'm sort of, I sometimes find myself a little bit chagrined that more people don't feel better about Canada holistically, that we're as regionally divided as we are, whether it's Alberta now, Quebec back in the day.
Yeah.
Ed Willis used to say before the internet, the Rockies served as a force shield for BC. Nothing got in, nothing got out.
Whatever happened in BC was in BC.
Didn't matter anywhere else. It wasn't even reported anywhere else. And BC didn't care about what was going on. So to have that sort of moment of unity and connectivity for Canada was amazing. And, to have it in the city that I called home and still call home was even better. Now, I have mostly nice things to say about covering the 2011 Stanley Cup final run. Mm-hmm. Alas, it ends on just such a horrific note that becomes the defining moment, element, whatever you want to say.
And the years that followed I know.
And the Canucks have said this, Gillis and Gilman and Vigneault, Kessler, Roberta, all of them have said this. They didn't necessarily conduct themselves as they would if they got a chance to do it again, right? They were fighting every battle. They thought the world was against them. They, at one point, 2-0 and 3-2, I think we're counting chickens, and I think that only made it more and more difficult when they lost the final 2 games.
Right.
The NHL was a mess the way they handled it. And
I know.
Campbell, Gary Bettman obviously never took a conflict of interest course or an ethics course at Cornell because that Colin Campbell was involved in, even if he had recused himself, was just so ludicrous.
I know.
Getting up to the Cup final was great.
Yeah.
Like, whether it was the games in San Jose, Nashville, the Slay the Dragon, that was amazing. And you're sitting there, and this is a year later, Jackie, going, how lucky am I? I'm covering another event that's going long term here with all of these awesome moments that you bear first witness to.
Yeah.
And then we got to the final, and the moments weren't quite as awesome. And not just because the Canucks were losing, but because of what I just talked about, how frustrating it was to deal with the NHL, how frustrating it was to deal with the Vancouver Canucks, how mean-spirited it was at times in Boston.
Mean-spirited in the sense
mean-spirited in the sense that...
whatever you're allowed to say.
Well, so in some cases it was amusing. I told this story before. After game, I think it was game 4, I'm sitting there on the street outside of a bar talking to someone, about to go home. I turn around and reach for the cab handle. Another guy reaches for the cab handle at the same time, and he sort of looks at me and he goes, "Whose cab?" And I'm like, I don't know if it makes any difference to you. I got an early flight to Vancouver tomorrow morning. And he goes, "Oh, you take the cab. You take the cab then. You need more than me." And he opens the door. Nice. He opens the door and I get in and I go, "Oh, that's very kind. Nice of you to see." He said, "You said you're going to Vancouver?" I'm like, yeah. So go fuck yourself.
I was like, oh, man.
Now, that was amusing, though. I mean, the thick Massachusetts accent, but there were a few moments in there because, I remember going to Forest, which was the big sports bar there. Bobby Orr, number 4, a bunch of other.
Sounds like the guy had some Bill Burr in him.
Yeah.
I love Bill Burr, by the way.
Yeah. So it's closed down now, but it's the big Boston sports bar. It was a couple blocks from the arena. I was there with BMAC.
Yeah.
We were there with a bunch of Canucks fans. A couple of them were completely overserved.
Yeah.
One of them spilled a full table of drinks. Then some chirping started with Bruins fans, and Barry grabbed me and I was like, "We're getting out of here. We don't need to be involved here." He's like, "Because we'll be in the paper if this goes off, right? It'll be like Sekeres and McDonald, and McDonald and Sekeres from Team 1040 were in the middle." So, so there were moments like that. And then, my God, I did not have a good feeling for them, Juggy, on the morning of Game 7. I can't explain to you why.
I kind of felt the same, too.
I can't explain to you why.
It was already kind of gloomy out too, and there was just this thick tension in the air.
There was thick tension. It's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And then I walked out of there for morning skate, and Tommy McVie, the Bruins scout based in Vancouver, legendary guy in scouting circles, in fact, just passed away a few months ago. He was there with his family by the Rick Hansen statue. Do you remember when it's gone now?
Yeah.
Because there's a tower there. But the Rick Hansen statue right by Pacific. Mm-hmm. And they were taking photos, and they were all in Bruins jerseys. And it was just a family gathering, and you could tell they were all there to, support Tommy and Dad, Grandpa, whomever, Uncle. It could win a Stanley Cup here tonight, so let's be there for it.
Yeah.
And a guy on a bike drove by, and he sort of looked, and he saw all the Bruins jerseys, and then he stopped, and he decided he was going to shout something profane to the whole family. There's kids there. And I was like, oh man, this guy went out of his way to shout, "Fuck Boston."
Yeah.
At a group of people with children, I'm sure he doesn't realize that the guy works for the Bruins. But I was like, that's terrible. Just go about, just keep driving by.
I know.
It made no sense to me. So I didn't really consider riots.
No, I honestly, I was shocked. I was
I knew about the riots, but I didn't consider. I think I was so exhausted. I was so hung up in actually covering the game, because when you were covering games for Globe and Mail deadlines, that was pretty like you didn't have a lot of time. So I was sort of most fixated on that. And so I file my story after they lose. And I'm downstairs at the event level in the pen waiting to get into the Canucks room. And one of my friends from Ontario texted me. It's like, you're probably interviewing hockey players right now, but just so you know, outside your city is burning. I'm like, what? And then I think it was Jay Janauer said something like, do you know they're rioting outside? And then like we got into the room, and I think it was Janauer again. I think it was the second question to Henrik about the riots that were going on. And Henrik gave such a perfect answer, like he was... he had the presence of mind in that moment to understand that, like, as devastating as a hockey loss was, there was something bigger that was going on outside.
Yeah.
And he said, that's just terrible. We have the most beautiful city in the world. I don't know why anyone would destroy it. I'm really disappointed to hear that or something. And Juggy, my like heart just sunk.
Yeah.
Because
it's not the way it should have been.
Would have loved to have seen the Canucks hoist the cup and cover that story.
Yeah.
But, I didn't approach the job back then, still don't, as a pure fan. I'm a fan of the sport. I'm a fan of different individuals, but I don't tend to root for teams, at least not teams we cover.
Yeah.
So, I was feeling a little bit down for the city and all my friends, who were big Canucks fans. But, when Henrik said that, and I recognized that I had to go back upstairs and rewrite my story and then step into God knows what. That my heart just sunk. Like at that point, I realized this wasn't about hockey anymore, that this was a bigger story, and that it was even worse than a Game 7 Cup final loss.
It was worse. And, I think like the crazy part for me was like everyone just kind of like blamed each other. Like the politicians were blaming the police were like going after, like, and it's like, and then they just decided to shut everything down for all the future celebrations.
Like to this day, Juggy, we still don't get that, right?
Which is crazy because like
awful.
other cities like Toronto and all these other cities, how are they able to do it? And so it's like, you're telling me that Vancouver just can't handle it? I don't buy it.
Those amazing scenes in Jurassic Park and the oil patch, 16th Ave and whatever Ave it is in Calgary. It's been so long for the Flames.
Yeah.
But all those like, public viewing parties and
I can't imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And
so something was lost that day.
Yeah.
Something was lost that continues to go on. And like you say, like I would like to think our city is responsible enough to watch in big groups.
Well, and I hope that, the team just has more success.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's such uncertainty. There's a lot of things and a lot more we could talk about, honestly. But, I, just before you do get out of here, because I do think this is an important thing to really touch on. I know that obviously the way TSN 1040 ended, and for those that may not know, it was such a sudden ending, and it was such a crazy ending, which none of you, I don't think, expected at all, from my sort of recollection of it. And the sort of, I don't want to use the word callous, but it kind of was, the way that everyone was told to pack up within the half hour, and they just kind of like turned off the sort of radio waves, right? While Bruff and Halford are on air. Mm-hmm. And so what was that like for you? Did you think that you would still be continuing within that field before Sekeres and Price?
Yeah. So, Juggy, I always say this. I was probably the least surprised of anyone in the building for several reasons. Number one, I had already sort of had to reinvent myself from newspaper reporter to talk radio host because I saw the way the newspaper industry was going. So I was always sort of interested in terms of different scholars, writers, broadcasters who would talk about, which way the media business was going. And I can remember several years before 1040 went down, reading an article from a media watcher, and he listed jobs that weren't going to exist in 5 to 10 years. And one of them was generalist all sports radio host. And I went, man, I'm a generalist on sports radio host. So I sort of understood that, okay, radio and this medium is probably not in its heyday either.
Yeah.
We had a bunch of layoffs at Bell Media a few weeks before 1040 went down.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
And after those were done, a guy by the name of Jonas Siegel, who runs the Toronto sports media blog and podcast, someone I've known for a long, long time. In fact, I did his first show. I did his first podcast. So this was like 20 years ago. So there you go, Juggy. You've got somebody who's a longtime veteran of doing other people's podcasts.
Jonas Siegel,
So Jonah kept saying to me, he's like, Matt, I'm hearing they're not done. And so I would check around with the people I knew in the company and nobody seemed to know anything. But I always had that in the back of my mind that like Jonas usually got pretty good info on this. And he says like Bell Media's not done laying people off here. And that morning in February, the Tuesday after the Super Bowl, because Juggy, they needed us to unpack the Super Bowl. It's Bell Media's biggest television property, in case you don't know. So they were never going to cut the station the day after the Super Bowl.
I know.
So I'm at home. I get a phone call from Jonah, which was really odd because normally if he wanted to get in touch, he would DM me or he would text me.
Yeah.
But he actually called me and I was like, this is odd. And he says, Matt, check your inbox. He's like, I think you're going to have an email from James Stewart, who's the VP of Western Canada for Bell, inviting you to a conference call at 9:30 this morning, at which point he's going to tell you they're shutting down your station and like 3 others across the country. And sure enough, I looked at my email and I'll be damned, Juggy was there. James Stewart invited me to a meeting. And so Jonah was wholly apologetic. I'm sorry, Matt, that you're finding out this way. I feel terrible about it. I'm like, no, Jonah, like big boy business. We're in the truth-telling business. I appreciate this. Thanks for getting back. And, no sooner did I hang up the phone, I saw a text from Jason Bruff to Blake and I and went, it's the damnedest thing. McCletchy can't get control over the board.
Holy crap.
And Blake's like asking, what do you mean? He's like, he's done everything because as a producer, you have every override imaginable to you on that huge board. I mean, you've got familiarity with a board like that. There's always something you can do to get the microphone's active, right?
Yeah.
Because the commercials play on cards or digitally now. And they're like, McCletchy can't get us back on air. What the hell's happening? And I wrote, I think they're shutting us down.
Jeez.
And sure enough, they did.
Wow. And essentially, did they say why they did it that way?
Well, it was cost, right? We didn't have Canucks rights, and it's costly to run sports.
But without any notice, they just said, we're not. They didn't even.
But I'll say this, because I've heard the horror stories from other places. They actually did it reasonably humanely.
Okay.
Like we were allowed to go in that day and collect our affairs, which was great because I had a bunch of stuff there, and I got a chance to see a few people to wish them farewell.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah.
There was no marching out, right?
No.
Like there was no sort of public humiliation in person.
Yeah.
The severance packages were all paid in full. They didn't try and lowball anyone that I know of. At least was satisfied with the severance. They had it coordinated with meetings with HR and what to expect.
Yeah.
And all of that. So there is no easy way to do that.
No.
Our conference call with James Stewart was very brief, but, again, by design, like he's only so many things he's allowed to say from a legal point of view.
Yeah.
I had lobbied them to allow us to keep our contacts, like don't delete our phones and our, because we're reporters and those contacts are very important. That's how we make our living.
Yeah.
They didn't fully play ball on that, but at least we had a little bit of time to be able to, basically, back up our phone, make sure we have our contacts, make sure we got our emails and stuff like that were important. We had a little bit of time to get that together. So, so very sad. I got to say, others were sadder than me. Others were angrier than me.
Fair enough.
When I think about it, I think more along the lines of the careers that were ruined or changed that day. That makes me more upset than anything, any kind of personal hardship.
Of course.
Blake was on the phone with me that afternoon saying we've got to start our own show in the digital space on Monday.
Wow.
I'm like, whoa, that's a little quick. I need time to grieve, Blake. Like, I think all told, the emails, the texts, the calls, the DMs, there was like 1,000 people who I had to basically get back to that became my job, Juggy, for a full week. I just got back to people. I would wake up literally at 6 a.m. and just pick up where I left off the other day. Okay, this guy texted. I'm going to text this guy back, this DM, and I would just methodically work my way through all the people who were well wishing. So
wow.
So that part was quite uplifting. To know, and I got heard from all sorts of people that I hadn't talked to in a while, including our interns, some of whom had moved on to positions in sports media. Those were tough.
Yeah,
those were the tough ones to get to because they're young and they're so full of enthusiasm and optimism, and they're seeing like an awful part of the business, happen to, people who were mentors or who helped build them up and get them in the industry. So some were very tough. I put on a brave face for my partner. I put on a brave face for my family because they were, oh, this is your dream job and now it's gone. And, to Blake's credit, his idea was absolutely right. Like we could pick up the show and bring it to the digital space and have a commercial enterprise that allowed us to continue doing it and earn a living. And we've done that for the last 4 years, and that I'm very proud of.
That's beautiful. No, I mean, I think that's really inspiring, and that's really what I wanted to end off with is that message of no matter what happens, no matter how it happens, it's how we all move forward.
Yeah.
And you guys have done such an incredible job with the podcast that you guys do and the show that you guys do.
Thank you,
with the way, like you said, interacting with people. I know Donnie and Dolly is a big one too. And there's so many people that have carved out interesting careers and great ways to move on. But I think that's a credit to you guys. That's a credit to everybody involved and to really carry that forward. Matt Sekeres, everybody, thank you so much for joining the show, man. Honestly, it's such a fulfilling conversation.
I so appreciate the conversations we have together, my
100%,
friends.
100%.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, and everybody, have a great day, a great night whenever you're going to be listening to this, and we'll be back with another powerful one very soon. Take care.
The time has come to share your thoughts. Relive your moments. Open up your heart with one and only Rhythm and Remedy.